Welcome everybody to the Wild West. In this video, I'm going to attempt to survive 100 days in Minecraft. Some of the challenges I'm going to have to face in this video will consist of the treacherous weather, fighting off wild animals, and building a thriving western town to call home. This type of video is a bit different than what I normally do, so hopefully it goes over well. This video was mainly inspired by my good friend Fixit412, but also the other various YouTubers out there doing 100 days videos right now. But enough of that, let's go ahead and get started. Day one, I started off on a mountain next to a savanna, and I started to head into the savanna to start looking for some food and materials. Ended up finding this village that I ransacked for food and other materials. And then I headed on my way into the mountains. Ended up finding some emus while I was looking for a place to live, and decided to stop in this village to sleep through the first night. The next day I continued on my way and eventually ended up finding a mesa, where I plan on building up my village for this video. Found another village that I looted of all its materials, got some bookshelves that'll be useful for enchanting later on, and I started to craft up my first stone tools. Ended up finding a tumbleweed that dropped a piece of wheat for me. On day 3 I ended up finding some roadrunners attacking a snake, and then I ended up trying to kill a couple of snakes myself just to see what they dropped. I realized that they were super fast, so I had to run away for a little bit, but I eventually got this one. I started to head up into the mountains and search for a location for a home, but instead I ended up finding an albino ostrich. I ended up settling on this little location in this valley, although eventually I think I'll probably end up moving to a little bit of a bigger location. Started to head down into a cave and search for some coal, so I could smelt up some food and some other materials. Came back up, made a furnace, and then I ended up going to bed for that day. Day 4, I started off getting some sand because I need some sand for some bottles so I can get water. Went to the nearby river to try to get some water, then I realized I can't just pick up this water with an empty bottle. So I ended up having to drink it straight out of the river, and it was not very clean. Headed back down into the cave and ended up finding a mine shaft and went ahead and looted some stuff from there. And on my way out, I had to fight off a snake and a zombie to be able to get back to my bed. But I eventually made it safely. Day 5, I had to kill off all the mobs from the previous night and headed back down into the mine shaft with some torches. Came back up to the surface, made a cauldron to put my water in, then went over to the river, picked up a couple buckets of water, and put them back down in the cauldron. From there, I was able to bottle it and then cook it in the furnace to purify it. After that, I headed back up into the mountains to do a little bit more exploring. Ended up finding a plains village right on the other side of the mountain that had a bunch of food in their chests. Day 6, I explored a little bit more around that village and ended up finding a better sword and an iron helmet. And I went ahead and stole their grindstone. Continued to do a little bit of looting, ended up finding some leather boots that was better than nothing for me. And then I went ahead and head back home. Decided to make an infinite water source so I wouldn't have to go back and forth to the river all the time. And just did a little bit of work on keeping myself alive. Went out to look for leather and I realized these kangaroos drop their own leather. So I decided to attempt to kill a few more kangaroos because I was in real need of leather. But I decided it was a little too dangerous as they packed quite the punch. Then I decided to head back home and sleep the night away. Day 7, I decided to go out and do a little bit more exploring. I tried to make an infinite source of the purified water, but that obviously did not work. And I used the rich soil I grabbed from one of the villages and I started to farm up some trees. They were growing super fast, so I was able to get quite a bit of wood pretty quick. Day 8, I decided I needed a horse, so I headed out to try to find some, and I ended up finding some pretty quickly. First horse I grabbed was super fast, so I just stuck with that one. I didn't even try to get another one. Also ended up finding this real fancy flower forest with these wisteria trees, because I thought the color of the wood would be pretty useful for future builds. Found another village, looked around a little bit, ended up finding some raccoons that wanted my food. And I ended up sleeping at that village for that night. Day 9, I found some hummingbirds right off of that and ended up killing a couple of cows trying to get some leather, but still didn't have enough. Right after that, I found some platypuses in the river. Was not expecting that, but there you go. And I started to head back home and ended up finding a little road sign pointing me back in the direction I needed to go. While I was there at that road sign, I decided to stop and make a calendar just so I could see what season it is. and I'm guessing this is spring. I'm not exactly sure, to be honest. Day 10, I made it back home and started to do a little bit of sorting and started to plan out a storage area for this little temporary place. Day 11, I decided I needed to get some more materials before I could start building anything, so I headed out again to try to find some different tree types and maybe some more food. Then I ended up stumbling upon this barley field that I thought would be the perfect place to build up a little town. So I made a mark of it and then continued traveling, but I think we'll return here in the very near future. Stumbled upon this desert village with this really cool desert mountain next to it and ended up sleeping there for the night. Day 12, I headed out again and searched for a redwood forest, which I eventually found on the other side of a little pumpkin patch. Harvested up a bit of that wood and some saplings so I could do a little bit of building with that later on, and decided to continue exploring to see what else I could find in the world. Ended up stopping to sleep on this little beach here. And in the morning, I found this weird blue forest biome. I don't know what it's called, but I tried to harvest a few saplings in some of these woods. Continued on with the exploring on day 13, and I ended up finding these walruses, is that what they're called? I think so, on the beach, and I just messed around with them a little bit and then I left them alone. Super cool to see something like that out in the wild though. Decided it was probably about time I head home, so I started to make my way back. Got back to that spot I decided would be our future home, and decided to make a little mark of it so I knew where it was when I tried to move all my stuff back. Started to head home to start packing everything up to move to the new location, and was able to do that pretty quickly. By day 14, I was pretty much done getting everything moved. At the new location, I started setting up all my trees again and started planting a few more trees so we could finally start building up the town. Skipping a few days ahead, I spent the last few days sorting all my stuff out. Now on day 18, we are starting to build up the first house. And I'm glad we're finally at this point because we definitely need it to be able to survive through this 100 days. So by the end of day 18, I got a bit of the framing done for the house. And on day 19, I realized I forgot to grab spruce, so I went out real quick just to grab a few spruce trees, and then headed back home, and on day 20, we started building the rest of the house. Ended up making pretty good use of that wisteria I was talking about earlier. Decided that would be the walls for this house, and I think it's going to end up turning out pretty cool. Like I said earlier, spent pretty much the entirety of day 20 building up the front of our first house, and I think it turned out pretty dang good. Day 21, I continued building the house here, filling in the floor and building up some of the walls. After that, I decided to make a diamond axe and I figured out how to climb walls. Figured this would be super useful for harvesting wood, harvesting these giant trees. Day 22, I got most of the exterior of the house finished. Day 23, I went down into the ravine and started to do a little bit more mining because I needed some coal, a bit of iron, and some flint too, because we are going to be making a revolver, and we're going to need that for the ammo. Got back home, couldn't find a good place to sleep in my bed, so I decided to make the revolver and fight off the spider and zombies outside my house. Day 24, I ended up completely finishing the exterior of the house, the main section of it being the roof. And I think it turned out pretty good. I'm pretty happy with how this place is turning out so far. I'm very excited to get the rest of these houses put in this town. After that, I decided to go down and get some cobblestone so I could finish off the house by putting a chimney. And there it is. I think it turned out pretty good. That'll be very useful in the future. Day 26, I decided to head back down into the caves. Almost got myself pushed off a ledge and killed, but I was able to kill off the zombie and then I headed even deeper into the cave. Ended up running into some skeletons and almost got myself killed again. Had to run away and block myself in a little hole underneath where the skeleton was. Eventually I regened enough where I was able to kill off the skeletons and we got out of there safely. Skipping ahead a couple days, I spent some time down in the mines, just gathering up some materials, and I decided to head out traveling again. Ended up running into another albino emu, and ended up finding this silk touch pickaxe, which is going to be very useful at some point, I'm sure. Stumbled upon this desert village with an alligator outside of it and ended up sleeping inside the village for that night. Day 32, I headed back out of the village and stumbled upon a little desert temple. Found some pretty good stuff inside of that, including some diamonds, and headed back out to keep exploring. Ended up finding this strange, dreary biome with fossils all over the place, filled with kangaroos. But didn't stay there long, I decided to just keep heading out. Found a couple more really cool biomes along the way, and ended up making a bedroll to sleep in on the side of this mountain here. Day 33, I started out by getting some dogs to have as new pets to bring along with me on my trip, and raided this small little village on the side of this mountain here. Found this redwood forest with this beautiful river running through it. This would be a really nice place for a little cabin in the woods at some point. After that, I found this crazy huge mountain range, and then ended up sleeping on the beach again for that night. Ended up finding this pillager outpost on the beach, but I didn't feel prepared enough to take it on just yet. Found this really cool rainforest where I could finally get some cocoa beans and jungle wood, and ended up grabbing some of the mahogany wood around the area too. Day 35, I started off by finding some elephants and then some fire ants. Didn't want to mess with them too much, but they have this really cool anthill that they've built up, it looks like. After that, I continued to explore a bit and ended up finding this whale that was surrounded by drowns. After I killed off the drowns, I decided to try to help free this whale from this little spot it was stuck in. Ended up getting it free from these ocean ruins, but it just ended up getting itself stuck again immediately afterwards. Day 36, I left that little area and immediately found a volcano, it looks like. I tried to traverse the volcano as safely as I could, and once I got to the other side, I decided to sail out just a little bit to see what was in the ocean there. Decided to loot a little shipwreck that I found, but I decided to head back because a hammerhead shark started to chase me, and I wasn't sure if it'd be able to get me from the water or not, so I just booked it straight back to the shore. Thankfully, I made it safely back, and I decided it was probably about time I headed back home. Day 37, I spent pretty much the entire day heading back home. Ended up finding some loot in a chest in the mesa, but for the most part, that was pretty much the only interesting thing that happened. Day 38, I continued to head back home, ended up finding this little swamp biome that I wanted to harvest some willow trees from. So I went ahead and did that. That took me way longer than I expected, so I ended up sleeping in the swamp there. And I spent the next few days just trying to get back home. Day 41, I finally made it back home. Decided to do a little bit of tree farming with the new saplings that I got, and placed down this globe that I think I found in the shipwreck. Day 43, I started building the new house. Day 44, I continued that house. And by the end of day 44, I had the front pretty much all the way complete. Day 45, I started adding some details to the house. And day 46, I found this little ring of flowers out back behind the house. Decided to dig down to see if there's anything underneath, and I ended up finding some diamonds at the bottom. Day 47, I returned to the surface to make some diamond tools and continued decorating the house with a couple little decorations that I've been crafting up. Continued building the exterior of the house on day 48. And day 49, I got the exterior pretty much completely done. Just needed to throw a little roof on the top of it. Day 50, I decided it was about time I start working on some bigger farms for the area. So I decided to craft up this plow for my horse and put some hoes in it. And I started plowing a little field outside the town. But it didn't work out so well with all the barley and grass there, so I had to get rid of that. Day 51, I got a big spot cleared out and started to make some good progress on the fields. So I went through, started planting some crops, and I realized I would have to have a different way to do this because the soil was drying up pretty quickly. So I went around, put some water under the ground, and that helped a lot with keeping the farmland hydrated. So on day 52, I pretty much got all the farmland completed, but not without a little bit of a challenge first. Planted down all the seeds that I had so we can get as much food going as possible. And once I finished up that, I decided to start making a coke oven so we could get into some machinery. Decided I wanted to head into the nether, so I started preparing for that, stocking up on some water, had to get some obsidian for the portal of course. And on day 55, I ended up making the portal and heading into the nether. Took a little look around inside my nether. I wasn't completely ready to go in just yet, so I just decided to gather up a little bit of netherrack for some blocks I was going to need. I ended up finding this ghost, which I fought off and got some soul beads from, which we'll figure out what to do with those later on. But I headed back into the overworld to smelt up some of that netherrack I got and make some nether bricks. Decided it was probably a good time to get a map, so I made this antique atlas that I could use in the nether to find my way back to the portal. And I headed back in to find a nether fortress. Had to fight off this gas immediately as I got outside the cave that I was in. Tried to see if I could find any signs of a nether fortress on the map. Unfortunately, I couldn't. So I just headed out to start walking and looking for one. I ended up seeing one on the map I had, so I decided to dig down through the netherrack, and I eventually ended up finding it. Went around gathering some materials like the nether wart, the soul sand, and got some blaze rods from some blazes, obviously, and fought off some wither skeletons just to see if I could get a wither skull. Day 58, I decided that's pretty much all I needed for now, so I decided to head back out of the nether. not even realizing that I was almost out of food. So that was making the trip back even more difficult than it was before. My hunger was getting down super, super low, so I had to be super careful, trying to avoid as many mobs as I possibly could. At the very end, I thought I was dead for sure. A gas shot right at me and hit the stairs that I was walking up, nearly killing me. And then after that, I started to get way too hot, and I was starting to take damage from that. So I had to take all my armor off, which was not comforting at all. Having to take all my armor off when I'm sitting at 1.5 hearts in the nether, it was getting very intense very quickly. I was getting very close to my portal, but I wasn't exactly sure where it was. Eventually, I found my way back into the portal and just booked it straight in. Got back to the overworld, and of course it was nighttime, so I just locked myself in a little hole and decided to start digging through the mountain I was in. Got out on the other side and decided it was probably better to just book it back home than sit and wait, so that's what I started to do. Thankfully, I made it back to the house okay, was able to get some food and heal up a little bit, but when I got back to the house, I wasn't able to sleep because there were mobs right outside the house. Eventually was able to sleep, finally, and the next day I decided to start farming up some food because I got way too close with the food there in the nether. So after I harvested a bunch of crops from the fields, I decided to go out with this little wagon and scoop up some cows to bring back to the town to start breeding up. Eventually made it back to the town with the cows and put them in this little pen that I made behind this new house that we built up. Decided to mess around with some more cards, so I made this little storage card to have at least as decoration in the town. May be useful at some point in the future, but for now it'll just be decorative. And then headed out to a village to try to get some villagers. Ended up running into this bear along the way and had to fight it off because I wanted to get some of its fur. I wanted to make this raccoon hat, but I needed some bear fur to be able to make it, so I tried to kill off the bear to get some fur, but unfortunately it didn't drop any. Decided to head back to this village to grab some villagers and bring back to the town. Unfortunately, I was only able to grab one at a time in the wagon, so I had to go back and forth twice. Got the villagers back to the house and started doing a little bit of trading with them. Decided I probably needed some sheep too for some wool, so I went and got some sheep as well, brought them back to the pen, and I had to head out once again because I needed some magma blocks for a blast furnace. On my way to find some magma blocks, I ended up getting attacked by this alligator that I didn't even see in this river here. So I fought it off with the revolver I made and ended up getting some crocodile scales from it. Eventually found a ruined portal with some magma blocks in it and gathered up all of those. And after that, I headed back home. Day 66, I made it back home, made up the coke oven and the blast furnace. Started smelting up some iron so I could make some steel. And on day 67, I decided it was time to get to work on building up even more houses. So I got started on the storage barn. Day 68, I spent most of that day working on the front of the storage barn. 69, I finished the front of the storage barn. I think it's looking really, really good so far. I'm happy with it. And on day 70 and day 71, I spent those days working on the sides and the back of the storage barn. Day 72, I finished the exterior of the barn and started clearing out some room on the inside. Day 73, I finished up doing a little bit of detailing on the barn here, adding in a little pulley at the very top to look like it's carrying up boxes. And then on day 74, I decided I needed to do just a little bit more mining. Headed down into the mines, got a bit of coal, got a bit of iron, almost got killed by a creeper and some skeletons, got some gold, and ended up finding this really cool crystal cave with these crystal shards just all over the place. But I got pretty much everything I needed, so I headed back up to the surface, harvested some wood for the barn, and then continued building up the interior. I finished building up the majority of the barn and started to move in my storage. And by the end of day 78, I got that pretty much all the way completed. Day 79, I decided to start doing a little bit more trading with the villagers because I needed some specific wood types that I didn't have just yet. Day 80, I decided it was about time I start building up a new house. Got all the framing pretty much all the way done and started filling in the walls. And on day 81, I started adding in the details onto the house. Day 82, I got the house completely finished and started working on another house. I plan on this one being the gunsmith for the town. And what it'll actually probably end up being is probably just storage for any like weapon related items. Got the framing for the front of the house pretty much all the way done. Started filling it in with some blue planks. And by day 83, I had the front of the building finished, and I started building up the rest of the walls.
Well, let me have a rule and a saw and a board and I'll cut it. I'll climb up a ladder with a hammer and a nail and I'll nail it. Well, we worked so hard to build a little house together. In the snow or the rain or the ice cold wind, whenever, no matter what the weather, we're together.
After I finished up the house on day 85, I decided to head out to get some more redwood saplings because I was running very low. In day 86, I started building the next building, which would be the saloon. And I didn't have quite as much progress as I wanted yet, so I decided it was probably about time I started building through the night. And of course, the very first night I decided to stay up, I died. And day 86 would be the end of this journey. I'm pretty sad about this death, to be honest. You know, I think a lot of people wouldn't have uploaded this video, but I'm very happy with the progress that we did make in this village. Of course, I would have wanted to make more, and I had plans to do more after episode 100. I even have pretty much the entire town planned out, but I think we'll probably save that for another time. Let me know, would you guys like to see another version of this video? I probably won't do it immediately. I have some other ideas for some different 100 days videos I would like to do. But if you guys have any suggestions, let me know. Let me know if you would like to see another one of these videos, whether it's Western or any other type of theme. It was a lot of fun working on this. I did slack a lot with the editing, and this video is coming out way later than I had hoped to. But you know what? That's okay. I still had a lot of fun working on this video. I definitely want to do more types of videos like this in the future. And let me know what you thought of this video. Hopefully you're not too unhappy that I didn't make it through it. I mean, I'm pretty disappointed, but like I said, it was still a good journey. I think it was still a fun video. And again, let me know what you would like to see next. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure to leave a like. Subscribe if you haven't already. And I will see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.